After my parents divorced, I moved back to my family's old house in rural Arkansas. The house was over 80 years old and sat deep on a large piece of land, about a 20-minute drive from the nearest town. I had nowhere else to go. My dad agreed to let me stay there temporarily. I thought I would like it. It was quiet, no one would bother me, and I could take time to rethink my life. The house was old and creaky. The wooden floors squeaked with every step. The windows often stuck. And even with the air conditioning on, it always felt a little cold at night. The basement was a real dirt basement, no concrete, just packed earth and a few wooden support posts. I almost never went down there because it was pitch dark and damp. The first few days went by fairly normally. I unpacked my things, cleaned up, and bought a few new items. In the evenings, I would sit on the porch drinking beer, listening to the insects and the wind blowing across the fields. I thought I had found a place to heal. But from the second week, I started noticing a strange smell. Whenever the weather was damp or after rain, a foul odor would rise from the basement, like dirty, moldy clothes, old sweat, and something rotting. I thought it was probably a dead rat or mold. So I bought bug spray and sprayed the basement, trying to ignore it. The smell didn't go away. It got stronger and stronger. Then I started hearing sounds at night, slow footsteps dragging across the dirt floor, as if someone was moving very carefully right beneath me. At first I thought it was the plumbing or wind blowing through cracks, but the sounds became clearer and had the rhythm of a person. I lay in bed with my heart pounding, trying to convince myself it was just my imagination. I turned on the bedside lamp and played louder music, but every night the sounds returned, usually sometime in the middle of the night. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. The sound came again, clear as if someone was walking right under my floor. I grabbed a strong flashlight, took a kitchen knife for good measure, and opened the basement door. A cold, damp draft rushed out, and the stench was so strong I almost vomited. I went down the old wooden stairs, shining the flashlight into the darkness. At the far end of the basement, behind some support posts, I found a small corner. There was an old sleeping bag, several boxes of dried food, a nearly empty water bottle, and a plastic bucket containing something that had dried up. The horrible smell was coming from that bucket. My heart nearly stopped. Someone had been living there, right under my feet, the entire time I had been in the house. I ran upstairs, locked the basement door, and called the police immediately. When the police arrived and searched more thoroughly, they discovered a secret passage from the corner of the basement leading straight out to the woods behind the house through an old crawl space hidden by wooden boards and dirt. The passage had been there for a very long time. It turned out that the previous owner's son, who had died for years earlier, had been secretly living in the basement for many years. He had turned it into his hiding place without anyone knowing. What was even more horrifying was that after I moved in, he still tried to come back twice. The police found fresh footprints and some food items missing. They said he might still be lurking somewhere near the woods. I didn't dare stay there another day. Just 1 week later, I sold the house at a very low price and moved away immediately. I have never gone back to that house. Even now, whenever I remember the strange smell from the basement and those nighttime sounds, I still shudder. I had been living with a stranger for weeks without knowing it. And worse, that person knew I was living alone right above him. That was the most expensive lesson. Sometimes an old house doesn't just carry family memories. It can also carry horrifying secrets you never want to discover. I lived alone in a small wooden house in rural Georgia. Behind the house was a wide open clearing that led straight into the forest. I moved here after ending a long relationship. I wanted a truly peaceful place to heal, and at first I thought I had found the perfect spot. During the day I worked remotely, and in the evenings I would sit on the back porch drinking coffee or beer, watching the sunset disappear into the trees. Life felt genuinely peaceful at that time. But everything changed on one bright moonlit night. It was around 1 a.m. I was sleeping when I suddenly woke up with a very strange feeling, the distinct sensation that someone was watching me. It wasn't a dream, it was a clear, spine-chilling feeling. I lay still for a moment, then slowly sat up and pulled the bedroom curtain aside. Under the bright white moonlight, about 30 meters from the house, I saw a man standing completely still in the clearing. He was wearing dark clothes, standing upright with his arms hanging at his sides. His face was turned directly toward my bedroom window. I froze. My heart pounded in my chest. I immediately turned off the bedside lamp so I could see better. He remained standing there, motionless, as if he was watching me through the window. I sat perfectly still, barely daring to breathe. After nearly 20 minutes of standing like a statue, he slowly turned and walked back into the forest, disappearing among the trees. I didn't sleep for the rest of that night. The next night, right around 1 a.m., I woke up with the same feeling again. I pulled the curtain back, and he was there again. Same spot, standing completely still, staring straight at my window. This time I watched more carefully. He wasn't carrying anything and didn't move. He just stood there and watched. I installed infrared cameras facing the backyard, but because he always stood quite far away, outside the range of the porch lights, the cameras only captured a blurry dark silhouette. His face was never visible. I started to feel real fear. Every night, I would pull the curtains tight and turn off all the lights, but I still felt like someone was standing out there. One night I couldn't take it anymore. When I saw him standing under the moonlight, I opened the window and shouted, "What do you want?" He didn't answer. He just slowly turned his head to look at me for a few more seconds, then calmly turned and disappeared into the forest like before. After that night, I found deep barefoot footprints pressed into the dirt right beneath my bedroom window. The prints were very clear, as if he had stood right against the wall of the house many times. I was so terrified that I couldn't sleep in that room anymore. I started sleeping in the living room, locking every door and installing more cameras. But he still appeared. Sometimes he stood closer, only about 15 meters from the back porch. Some nights I could hear slow footsteps on the dry grass right behind the house. I didn't dare stay there any longer. Just 2 weeks after finding the footprints, I decided to sell the house at a very low price and move to the city. Before I left, I took one last look at the clearing behind the house at night. Under the moonlight, that dark figure was still standing there, silently watching the house. I never found out who he was. I never knew what he wanted, and I didn't want to know. Even now, whenever the moon is bright and I'm alone, I still shudder when I remember that figure standing silently under the moonlight, quietly watching my bedroom window. That is the greatest fear of living alone in the countryside. You think it's just you and nature, but in reality, someone has been silently standing out there, watching you every night. After my uncle passed away, I moved into his old house in rural Tennessee. The house sat in the middle of a large cornfield, more than a mile away from the nearest neighbor. I moved there because I needed a quiet place to get my life back in order. My remote job allowed me to live anywhere, and the house was free, so I thought it was a reasonable choice. The house was old but sturdy, with a wide wooden porch and a backyard that looked out over an endless cornfield. The first few days felt quite peaceful. But from the second month, everything started to change. At first, it was just small sounds. Around 1:30 a.m., I began hearing whispering through my bedroom window. It was a man's voice, very soft, almost like breathing. It wasn't clear words, but more like someone muttering to themselves, repeating the same eerie rhythm over and over. I couldn't understand what was being said, but the voice had a strange cadence, steady yet broken. I thought I was imagining it. Maybe it was the wind through the cracks or the rustling of the corn. I closed the window tightly, drew the thick curtains, and even stuffed towels into the gaps. But the whispering still came through. It didn't get louder, but it was always there, right next to my ear. Every night it returned, always at the same time. I started losing sleep. I would lie in bed with my ears straining, heart racing, waiting for that whispering to start. Some nights it lasted only a few minutes. Other nights it went on for nearly half an hour. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. When the whispering began, I quietly slipped out of bed, grabbed a flashlight, and slowly pulled the curtain aside. Under the flashlight beam, I saw a figure crouching right under the window. His face was pressed so close to the glass that his breath fogged it up. His mouth was moving, whispering nonstop. He was wearing dark clothes and had messy hair. When the flashlight hit his face, he slowly lifted his head and looked straight at me. In that moment, our eyes met. I panicked and screamed, then turned on the porch light. He immediately stood up and bolted into the cornfield. I only caught a glimpse of his back disappearing among the tall corn stalks. The next morning, I called the police. They came and found clear footprints pressed deeply into the dirt right beneath my bedroom window. Next to them was a small, old wooden folding chair, the kind people use on patios. He had been bringing the chair to sit right under my window, against the wall of the house, whispering for many nights. The police said he had been doing this for at least 3 weeks. They took fingerprints from the chair and the window, but found no leads. They only advised me to install cameras and change the locks. I installed the cameras that same day. He never appeared again. Maybe he knew he had been discovered. Still, I couldn't sleep. Every night, I lay there listening, terrified that the whispering would return. Just 1 week later, I decided not to wait any longer. I sold the house at a very low price, packed a few personal belongings, and moved back to the city. I didn't want to know who he was, and I didn't want to know why he had chosen to sit under my bedroom window whispering every night. Even now, whenever I'm alone at night and hear any small sound from the window, I still shudder. I can't forget that face pressed against the glass, those eyes staring straight at me under the flashlight beam, and that steady, endless whispering. That is the greatest fear of living alone in the countryside. You think it's just you in the vast fields, but in reality, someone has been silently sitting right under your bedroom window, whispering for many nights without you ever knowing.